The year was 2347, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems. They had built colonies on distant worlds, created trade routes through the darkness of space, and believed they were alone in their corner of the galaxy. They were wrong. Admiral Jack stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the stars through the main window. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. His ship floated near the edge of human space, guarding the border against threats that had never come. Until today. The communication officer turned in his chair. His face was pale. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission. It is not human." Walk to the center of the bridge. His boots made heavy sounds on the metal floor. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared made every person on the bridge stop breathing. A creature stood before them, tall and covered in black scales. Its eyes were yellow and cold like a snake. Behind it, thousands of ships filled the screen, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built. "I am High Commander of the Empire," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough. "We have watched your species spread through our territory like insects. This ends now." Did not move. He did not blink. He just listened. "You have 30 days to surrender your planet Earth and all your colonies," continued. "You will give us your ships, your weapons, and your leaders. Your people will serve the Empire. If you refuse, we will destroy every human world. We will burn your cities. We will end your species. You are not the first to face this choice. All others have surrendered. You will do the same." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Turned to his communication officer. "Send this to Earth. Maximum priority. The Council needs to see this now." On Earth, President Laura received the message 3 hours later. She was a strong woman in her 60s with short white hair and sharp blue eyes. She had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing like this. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Within hours, the most powerful people on Earth gathered in the underground bunker beneath Geneva. Military leaders sat next to scientists. Diplomats sat next to intelligence officers. The air was thick with fear. General Sam stood first. He was a big man with a bald head and hands that had once held a rifle in combat. Now he held a tablet showing the intelligence reports. "The Empire controls over 3,000 worlds," he said. His voice was calm but heavy. "They have conquered hundreds of species in the last 500 years. Their fleet numbers more than 50,000 warships. Each ship is 3 times the size of our largest vessel." He paused and looked around the room. "If we fight them with what we have today, we will lose." Defense Secretary Wright spoke next. He was a thin man with glasses and a nervous way of moving his hands. "We should negotiate. Perhaps we can offer them something. Trade agreements, resources, anything to avoid war." Ambassador Torres shook her head. She was a young woman who had spent her life studying alien cultures they had never met. The "do not negotiate." Every species they have contacted has been given the same choice. Surrender or die. Those who surrendered became slaves. Those who fought were destroyed. The room fell silent again. President watched the faces around her. She saw fear. She saw doubt. She saw men and women trying to understand how to save their people from something they could not defeat. Then a new voice entered the room through the speakers. It was Admiral, connected from his ship thousands of light years away. "May I speak, Madam President?" Nodded. "Go ahead, Admiral." His voice was steady. "I have read the history of our species. We have faced impossible enemies before. We have stood against armies that outnumbered us 10 to 1, 100 to 1. We have fought when there was no hope of victory, and somehow we survived. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we refused to give up." He paused. "They expect us to surrender. They have never met a species that chose to fight when the odds were this bad. That is our advantage. They do not know what humans can do when our backs are against the wall." President listened carefully. Then she asked the question everyone was thinking. But how can we fight them, Admiral? You said yourself that their fleet could destroy us. Before could answer, another person stood up. Dr. Amy was a small woman with red hair and thick glasses. She led the science division and rarely spoke in military meetings. But today she had something to say. Madam President, I need to tell you about Project Prometheus. The room turned to look at her. For 30 years, we have been studying alien technology recovered from crashed ships and ancient ruins, Doctor explained. We have developed weapons that no one in the galaxy has ever seen. Plasma cannons that can melt through any armor. Engines that can make our ships invisible to sensors. And warheads powerful enough to destroy a moon. She looked around the room at the shocked faces. We built these weapons because we knew that someday someone would come. We prepared for this moment. We are not as weak as the believe. General leaned forward. Why were we not told about this? Because the project was classified at the highest level, Doctor said. Only the President knew. We could not risk the information reaching alien ears. President stood up. The weight of her decision pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. Every person in the room waited for her to speak. She thought about the billions of humans on Earth and the colonies. She thought about the children who would grow up as slaves if she surrendered. She thought about her own, their faces smiling in the photos on her desk. Then she thought about what Admiral had said, about human history, about their ancestors who had fought against impossible odds and won, about the spirit that had carried her species from caves to the stars. She made her decision. We will not surrender, President said. Her voice was clear and strong. We will fight. We will use every weapon we have, every ship we can build, every soldier who will stand with us. If they want Earth, they will have to take it from our cold, dead hands. The room erupted. Some cheered. Some looked terrified, but everyone understood that the world had changed forever. Admiral smiled on his ship far away. Then let us show the galaxy what humans are made of. The message went out that night to every human colony. Earth would not surrender. Earth would fight. And for the first time in 500 years, the Empire would face an enemy that refused to kneel. The war for survival had begun. News of Earth's defiance traveled faster than light through the quantum communication networks. Within hours, every human colony knew that their leaders had chosen to fight. Within days, the entire galaxy was talking about the small species that had refused to kneel before the Empire. On Prime, the capital world of the Empire, High Commander received the news with cold anger. He stood in the war room surrounded by his generals, all of them tall reptilian creatures with scales of different colors. Maps of human space glowed on the screens around them. These insects dare to refuse us, said. His yellow eyes narrowed. They will learn what it means to challenge the Empire. Emperor sat on his throne above them, watching with ancient eyes. He was the oldest of the over 500 years old, and he had seen many species try to resist. All of them had failed. Do not underestimate them, the Emperor said. His voice was like stones grinding together. The humans spread quickly. They build quickly. They may be more dangerous than they appear. Bowed his head. My Emperor, I will gather the largest fleet in our history. We will crush them so completely that no species will ever dare to resist again. On Earth, every factory, every shipyard, and every workshop began the transformation to war production. Ships that had been carrying cargo now carried weapons. Workers who had built homes now built warships. The entire planet moved with a single purpose. Admiral returned to Earth to lead the military effort. He stood in the command center beneath the mountains of Colorado, watching screens that showed the status of every human ship and soldier. General stood beside him. We have 300 warships ready for combat, said. Another 200 are being converted from civilian vessels. Our ground forces number 20 million soldiers across all colonies. Nodded slowly. It is not enough. They will send thousands of ships. We need more. We need to build faster. Commander Lisa Grant walked into the room. She was a young officer with dark skin and determined eyes. She had been given the job of recruitment, and she had exceeded every expectation. "Sir, volunteers are flooding the recruitment centers," she reported. "We have more people wanting to join than we can train. I am opening new training academies on every colony." Allowed himself a small smile. "Good, train them fast. We do not have much time." In the Nevada research facility, deep underground where no spy satellite could see, Dr. Amy worked without sleep. Her team of scientists surrounded her, each one focused on their screens and machines. Dr. Price, her second in command, approached with a tablet in his hands. He was a young man with messy brown hair and the kind of energy that came from too much coffee and too little rest. "The Hellfire plasma cannons are ready for mass production," he said. "We have solved the cooling problem. They can now fire 3 times faster than before." Doctor took the tablet and reviewed the data. "What about the ghost drives?" "Ready. We tested them yesterday. Our ships can become completely invisible to sensors for up to 6 hours. "And the Nova warheads?" Dr. Price hesitated. "They are ready. But Amy, these weapons are incredibly powerful. A single warhead can destroy a small moon. Are we sure we want to use them?" Doctor looked at him with tired eyes. "They are coming to kill every human being in existence. We will use whatever weapons we must to survive." In the shipyards orbiting Mars, Captain Cooper walked through his new command. The USS Resolute was one of the first ships equipped with the new technologies from Project Prometheus. It was smaller than a warship but faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything the enemy had ever faced. Cooper was 32 years old with short black hair and calm brown eyes. He had graduated at the top of his class and served with honor in the colonial security forces. Now, he would lead one of the most important ships in the fleet. His crew gathered in the briefing room. Lieutenant Hayes was his tactical officer, a serious man who could calculate firing solutions faster than any computer. Lieutenant Brooks was his pilot, a woman with quick reflexes and a love for impossible maneuvers. Lieutenant Commander Palmer was his chief engineer, an older man who knew every part of the ship like it was his own body. "We are the tip of the spear," Cooper told them. "We will hit the enemy first. We will show them that humans are not prey, we are predators." On day 15 of the ultimatum, the first enemy scout fleet entered human space. 20 warships, each one massive and covered with weapons, moved toward the colony of Station. Their commander expected to find frightened humans preparing to surrender. He found minefields instead. The first explosion destroyed 2 ships instantly. The second explosion damaged 3 more. Before they could respond, the defense platforms opened fire from hidden positions on nearby asteroids. Then the human warships appeared. Admiral commanded the ambush from the USS Defiant. Captain Cooper and the USS Resolute struck from the left flank. Commander Torres attacked from the right. They were surrounded. The Hellfire plasma cannons proved their worth that day. The golden fire melted through armor like it was paper. The ghost drives allowed human ships to disappear and reappear behind enemy lines. They could not hit what they could not see. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, not a single ship remained functional. The humans had lost only 2 ships. Admiral stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space. His communication officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, we won. We actually won." Nodded, but he did not celebrate. This was just the beginning. This was their scout fleet. The real war is coming. He was right. When news of the defeat reached Prime, High Commander flew into a rage. He had never lost a battle in his 300 years of service. The idea that primitive humans had destroyed his ships was impossible to accept. "Gather the invasion fleet," he commanded. 20,000 ships, 5 million soldiers. We will not just defeat these humans, we will erase them from existence. The largest military force in galactic history began to assemble. Ships from 100 conquered worlds answered the call. Soldiers who had crushed 1,000 rebellions prepared for what they believed would be an easy victory. But on Earth, humanity prepared as well. Doctor completed the production of the Cascade disruptors, weapons that could turn enemy ships into bombs. Commander Grant trained the next generation of soldiers. Captain Cooper led his crew on raid after raid against supply lines. Kate Phillips, the chief intelligence officer, worked in the shadows. She had made contact with a species that had been enslaved by for 200 years. They wanted freedom. They were willing to help. There are others, Kate told President. The dozens of species who hate their masters. They are waiting for someone to show them that they can be beaten. President understood. Then we will show them. We will light a fire that will burn across the galaxy. The war for Earth had become something larger. It had become a war for freedom. And humanity would not stop until every chain was broken. The destruction of the Scout fleet sent shockwaves through the Empire. For 300 years, no enemy had won a battle against them. The news spread through the conquered worlds like a secret whisper, giving hope to billions of slaves who had forgotten what hope felt like. High Commander assembled his invasion fleet at the edge of human space. 20,000 warships floated in formation, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. 5 million soldiers waited in transport ships, eager to crush the species that had dared to resist. Stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. It was the largest ship in the fleet, armed with enough weapons to destroy a planet. He watched the human star systems on his screen and smiled his cold reptilian smile. "We will advance slowly," he told his commanders. "We will destroy every colony, every station, every ship we find. By the time we reach Earth, the humans will be begging for the surrender they refused." Admiral studied the enemy fleet through long-range sensors. He knew they could not win a direct battle against such overwhelming force. But humans had not survived for thousands of years by fighting fair. He gathered his commanders in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains. Captain Cooper, Commander Grant, General, and Kate Phillips sat around the table. On the screen behind them, the fleet glowed like a swarm of angry insects. "We cannot stop them here," said. "But we do not need to. While their fleet moves toward Earth, we will attack everything they leave behind." He pointed to the map showing territory. Their supply lines stretch across hundreds of light years. Their communication stations are poorly defended. Their colonies expect no attack because no one has ever been foolish enough to attack them. Captain Cooper leaned forward. "You want us to hit them from behind while they focus on Earth. I want us to burn their empire while they are not looking." Eyes were hard as stone. "We will show them that this war is not happening on their terms. It is happening on ours." Within days, human strike groups launched from hidden bases across the colonies. Captain Cooper led his squadron toward the supply depot at Nexus 7. It was a massive station that provided fuel and ammunition to the entire invasion fleet. The USS Resolute activated its ghost drive as they approached. Lieutenant Brooks guided the ship through the darkness, invisible to every sensor. Lieutenant Hayes prepared the weapons. Lieutenant Commander Palmer kept the engines running silent. "I have visual on the target," Brooks reported. 6 defensive ships. They are not moving. They do not know we are here." Cooper watched the station grow larger on his screen. Cargo ships moved back and forth, loading supplies for the front lines. Workers went about their tasks, completely unaware of the death that floated beside them. "All ships," Cooper said quietly, "fire on my command." The Hellfire plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Golden fire struck the defensive ships before they could raise shields. The station's armor melted under the attack. Secondary explosions ripped through the fuel storage sections. In 4 minutes, Nexus 7 was a burning ruin. Cooper did not stay to watch. Ghost drives active, all ships retreat, we have more targets tonight. Across the Empire, similar attacks struck without warning. Commander Brandon Torres led ground forces against garrisons on occupied worlds. His soldiers moved like ghosts, striking at night and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They freed prisoners, destroyed supply caches, and left behind only fire and confusion. Major Kelly commanded a fighter squadron that became legendary. Her pilots flew small, fast ships that could slip through enemy defenses and strike capital ships in their weak points. They began to call her squadron the Death Shadows, because they brought death and disappeared like shadows. On Prime, Emperor received report after report of attacks throughout his territory. Supply depots burned. Communication stations went silent. Garrisons were overwhelmed by enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere. "This is impossible," one of his advisors said. "The humans do not have enough ships to attack on so many fronts." The Emperor sat on his throne, his ancient eyes seeing more than his advisors could understand. "They are not attacking alone. Look at the pattern. These attacks are coordinated with uprisings on our subject worlds." He was right. Kate Phillips had spent months building a network of resistance movements across the Empire. Those tall, gray-skinned people who had been slaves for 200 years had secretly trained warriors in hidden camps. A race of four-armed beings had smuggled weapons into their cities. The small but fierce creatures with sharp claws had waited for their moment. Now that moment had come. Lieutenant Commander Martinez led the Special Forces teams that made contact with these resistance groups. He was a quiet man who spoke 7 languages and could blend into any crowd. His mission was to arm the rebels and coordinate their attacks with human operations. "To control the shipyards at Prime," Martinez reported to Kate Phillips through encrypted channels. "They have been building ships in secret for years. When we give the signal, they will turn those ships against their masters." Kate smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Tell them to wait. When the fleet attacks Earth, we will need every ship they have." The invasion fleet continued its slow advance toward human space. Grew frustrated as reports of chaos in his rear areas arrived daily, but he was too proud to turn back. The humans were clearly trying to distract him from his goal. He would not fall for such a simple trick. "Let them burn a few stations," he told his commanders. "When Earth falls, none of it will matter." But the attacks were not distractions. They were preparation. Doctor completed her latest invention just as the fleet crossed into human territory. The Cascade Disruptor was a weapon that targeted the power cores of ships, creating chain reactions that spread from ship to ship. "One hit can destroy a dozen vessels," she explained to Admiral. "But we only have 50 of these weapons. We need to use them at exactly the right moment." Understood. They were walking into a trap. They just did not know it yet. On the conquered worlds, the slaves waited. They hid weapons under their beds. They memorized the faces of their masters. They taught their children the old words of freedom that had been forbidden for generations. An elder gathered his people in a hidden cave beneath the shipyards. His voice was old but strong. "For 200 years we have served we have built their ships, we have worked their mines, we have watched our children sold as property, but now everything changes." He held up a small device that Kate Phillips had given him. It would send a signal when activated, telling all resistance movements across the galaxy to rise at once. "The humans have shown us that they can bleed. They have shown us that the Empire can break. When the time comes, we will finish what they started." The elder looked at the thousands of packed into the cave, their gray faces lit by dim lights, their eyes filled with a fire that 2 centuries of slavery had not extinguished. "When the time comes, we will be free." And in the darkness of space, the largest fleet in galactic history continued its march toward Earth, completely unaware that the empire behind them was about to explode. The fire was spreading, and soon nothing would stop it. The invasion fleet entered the Sol system on the 28th day of the ultimatum. 20,000 warships spread across the darkness between Jupiter and Mars, their weapons ready to destroy everything in their path. High Commander stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching Earth grow larger on his screen. It was a blue and green world, beautiful in the way that all living planets were beautiful. Soon it would burn. "Scan for enemy ships," ordered. His officers worked their controls. Their faces showed confusion. "Commander, we detect no fleet. The orbital stations are empty. The defense platforms are offline." Narrowed his yellow eyes. This was wrong. The humans had fought so hard, attacked so fiercely behind his lines, and now they simply abandoned their home. It made no sense. They must be hiding on the planet's surface, he decided. "Prepare the ground forces for assault. We will take their cities one by one." The transport ships moved toward Earth, carrying millions of soldiers ready for battle. The warships spread out to form a defensive perimeter around the planet. Allowed himself a smile. The war was almost over. He was very wrong. Behind the massive bulk of Jupiter, hidden by the gas giant's electromagnetic storms, 3,000 human warships waited in silence. Admiral stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the sensor data showing the enemy fleet taking position around Earth. "They fell for it," General said through the communication link. His ground forces were hidden in bunkers across Earth, ready to fight when the moment came. Nodded, "Signal all ships. We attack in 5 minutes." The message went out through the fleet. Captain Cooper received it on the USS Resolute. His crew prepared for the battle they had trained for their entire lives. "This is it," Cooper told them. "Everything we have done, every raid, every sacrifice, it all comes down to this day. We fight not just for Earth, but for every species they have conquered. We fight for freedom." Lieutenant Hayes finished his targeting calculations. "Sir, I have firing solutions for the enemy command ships. If we hit them first, we can throw their fleet into confusion." Lieutenant Brooks gripped her controls. "Ready to fly through hell if you need me to, Captain." Lieutenant Commander Palmer's voice came through the engine room speaker. "Engines at full power. Ghost drive ready. We are prepared." Cooper looked at his crew, these men and women who had become his family over the past months. "Then let us show them what humans can do." At exactly noon Earth time, 3,000 human warships emerged from behind Jupiter. They came in 3 waves, spreading out to catch the fleet in a devastating crossfire. Saw the enemy appear on his sensors and felt something he had not experienced in 300 years of war: fear. "All ships defensive formation," he commanded. "Fire at will." But the human ships were already among them. The ghost drives activated, making vessels disappear and reappear in unexpected positions. The Hellfire plasma cannons tore through armor like claws through flesh. The USS Resolute led the charge toward the Eternal Conquest. Captain Cooper had chosen his target carefully. If they could kill, the entire enemy fleet would lose its leadership. "Enemy fighters incoming," Hayes reported. 120 vessels. "Brooks, get us through them," Cooper ordered. Brooks smiled and pushed her controls forward. The Resolute twisted and rolled through the swarm of enemy fighters, moving too fast for their weapons to track. Human fighters followed in their wake, picking off the ships that could not match their speed. On Earth's surface, the transport ships began landing in major cities. Millions of soldiers poured out, expecting easy conquest. They found something else entirely. General had prepared the cities for this moment. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a trap. Every civilian who could hold a weapon had been trained to use it. In New York, Private First Class stood on a bridge over the East River. Soldiers advanced toward her position, their weapons firing. Her squad had fallen. She was alone. She did not run. Picked up a heavy plasma rifle from a dead soldier and opened fire. The first wave of enemies fell. The second wave hesitated. She kept firing. For 47 minutes, held that bridge alone. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found her surrounded by the bodies of over 50 soldiers. She had been hit 3 times but refused to fall. "I promised my little brother I would come home," she told the medics as they carried her away. "Could not let those lizards stop me." In Beijing, Sergeant Greg Mitchell led his squad through the burning ruins of the old city. Thousands of civilians were trapped in a shelter that they were trying to break into. Mitchell's squad was the only force close enough to help. They attacked without hesitation. 9 soldiers against 200 enemies. It should have been suicide. But Mitchell had chosen his ground carefully. The narrow streets forced them to come at them in small groups. Each group was destroyed before the next could arrive. For 6 hours, the squad held the line. When the battle ended, Mitchell had lost 4 soldiers, but 3,000 civilians walked out of that shelter alive. In space, the battle reached its peak. Admiral coordinated the attack from the USS Defiant, directing squadrons to weak points in the enemy formation. Captain Cooper and the Resolute finally reached the Eternal Conquest. "Nova warhead armed," Hayes reported. "We have 1 shot." Cooper looked at the massive ship on his screen. Was in there the commander who had threatened to destroy humanity? This was the moment. Fire! The Nova warhead streaked across the darkness. Point defense systems tried to intercept it, but Brooks had positioned them perfectly. The missile struck the Eternal Conquest in its reactor section. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship exploded with the force of a small star. The blast destroyed 17 other vessels that had been too close, and his entire command staff died in an instant. The fleet began to break. Without their commander, individual captains made different decisions. Some tried to continue the attack, some tried to retreat, some surrendered. Doctor's Cascade disruptors completed the destruction. Admiral gave the order, and 50 missiles launched into the heart of the enemy fleet. Each one struck a ship's power core and created a chain reaction that spread to nearby vessels. In minutes, thousands of ships were burning or disabled. Across the galaxy, Kate Phillips sent the signal that the resistance movements had been waiting for. On Prime, they rose up and seized the shipyards. On Worlds, slaves turned on their masters. They destroyed the garrison that had oppressed them for 3 centuries. Emperor watched his empire collapse from his throne room. Reports came in faster than he could process them. The invasion fleet was destroyed. The humans still stood. Subject races were rebelling on 1,000 worlds. For the first time in 500 years, the ancient emperor felt something he had forgotten was possible. Defeat. The Battle of Earth lasted 3 days. When it ended, the invasion force had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing back toward their territory. The humans had lost many ships and many lives, but they had won. Admiral stood on his bridge, watching the wreckage drift through space. Communication officer reported messages coming in from across human space. Celebrations, joy, disbelief. Captain Cooper called in from the Resolute. His ship was damaged but still flying. His crew was exhausted but alive. "Sir, what are your orders?" Looked at Earth, still blue and green and beautiful against the stars. They had saved it. Against all odds, they had saved it. Rest said, "Repair your ships, treat your wounded, because this war is not over." He turned to look at the stars, at the vast empire that still lay beyond them. "Now we take the fight to them." 1 year had passed since Earth's victory. In that time, everything had changed. Admiral stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, the new flagship of the combined Liberation Fleet. Around him floated over 60,000 warships, each one representing a world that had chosen to stand against tyranny. Human vessels flew alongside cruisers, destroyers, and fighters. Species that had been enemies for centuries now fought as brothers and sisters. Their destination was Prime, the heart of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 500 years. Today, that empire would fall. "All ships report ready," the communication officer announced. "The fleet is in position. The ground forces are prepared. The strike teams have infiltrated the palace." Nodded slowly. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the desperate battles, the impossible victories, the friends who had given their lives so others could be free. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Begin the final attack." The combined armada moved toward Prime like a wave of justice. The planet's defenses had been weakened by a year of rebellion. The once mighty Imperial fleet was scattered, fighting uprisings on 100 fronts. The empire that had seemed unstoppable was now breaking apart. Emperor watched the approaching fleet from his throne room. He was older now, his scales dull and his eyes tired. The past year had aged him more than the previous 5 centuries combined. "My Emperor," his last advisor said, "we should negotiate. Perhaps we can save something of the empire." Laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. "Negotiate? With what? Our fleets are destroyed. Our subject races have turned against us. The humans have done what no species has ever done. They have beaten us." He stood slowly from his throne, the throne that his ancestors had sat upon for 2,000 years. "Contact the human leader. Tell them I wish to discuss terms." On Earth, President Laura received the message with mixed emotions. She had dreamed of this moment for over a year, had worked toward it through endless days and sleepless nights. But she knew that victory came with responsibilities. She called her council together one last time. The faces around the table had changed. Some had died in the war. Others had grown older, harder, marked by the battles they had seen. But they had survived. They had won. "The Emperor wants to negotiate," told them. "We must decide what terms we will accept." General spoke first. He had led the ground campaigns that had liberated dozens of worlds. His hair was completely white now, and his hands shook slightly, but his voice was still strong. "The empire must dissolve completely. No military, no government over other species. Every world must be free to choose its own path." Kate Phillips agreed. She had coordinated the galaxy-wide rebellion that had made victory possible. "The subject races will not accept anything less. They have waited too long for freedom." Dr. Amy added her voice. "We should also demand access to their technology, not as conquerors but as partners. The knowledge they have could benefit every species in the galaxy." Ambassador Tors, who had become the voice of humanity to the freed worlds, raised the most difficult question. "What about justice? They have committed terrible crimes. Billions have died because of their conquests. Should there be trials, punishment?" President considered carefully. She thought about the anger that burned in so many hearts, the desire for revenge that would be so easy to satisfy. But she also thought about the future, about building something better than what had come before. "There will be justice," she decided. "War criminals will face trial, but we will not become what we fought against. We will not enslave thee as they enslaved others. We will show them and the galaxy that freedom means something." The surrender ceremony took place in the Great Hall of the Imperial Palace, the same hall where countless species had been forced to kneel before their conquerors. But today, those species stood as equals. Commodore Cooper commanded the task force that secured the palace. His crew from the USS Resolute stood with him, Hayes, Brooks, and Palmer. They had started the war as young officers. Now they were heroes, their names known across the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Martinez brought his Special Forces teams, the same soldiers who had trained the resistance movements that had torn the Empire apart. They stood guard as the representatives of free worlds filled the hall. Dr. and Dr. Price attended as honored guests. Their weapons had made victory possible, but they knew that the true victory was in the peace they would build afterward. Kate Phillips moved through the crowd, greeting the intelligence officers from 100 worlds who had worked with her. The network she had built would become the foundation of a new galactic government. Commander Lisa Grant stood with the officers she had trained, millions of soldiers from every human colony who had answered the call when their species needed them. Many had not returned. Those who had would carry the memories forever. Emperor entered the hall alone. His guards had abandoned him. His advisors had fled. He walked slowly to the center of the room where Admiral waited. "You are Admiral," the Emperor said. "I watched the recordings of your speech to your council when you convinced them to fight instead of surrender." Nodded, "I remember. I thought you were foolish. I thought your species would be destroyed within weeks." The ancient emperor's voice was quiet. "I was wrong. In 500 years, no one has ever proven me so completely wrong." He removed the crown from his head, a heavy thing made of dark metal and glowing gems. He placed it on the floor at its feet. "The Empire surrenders. I abdicate my throne. The war is over." The hall was silent for a moment. Then slowly, the representatives of the freed worlds began to cheer. The sound grew until it shook the walls, a celebration of freedom that had been earned through blood and sacrifice. Admiral did not cheer. He looked at the Emperor, this ancient creature who had caused so much suffering, and felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not triumph, just a deep, tired relief that it was finally over. "The war is over," agreed. "Now the real work begins." The Galactic Alliance was born that day. Representatives from over 500 worlds signed the founding charter, promising to protect each other's freedom and work together for the common good. Earth was one of the founding members, not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. President gave a speech that was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. She spoke of the sacrifices that had been made, the heroes who had fallen, the ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. She spoke of the future, of a galaxy no longer ruled by fear but united by hope. "When they demanded our surrender, we refused," she said. "Not because we were strong, but because we believed that freedom was worth fighting for. That belief brought us here to this moment, where every species in the galaxy can choose its own destiny." She looked at the camera, at the billions of beings watching across countless worlds. "The old order is gone. The new order is what we make of it. Let us make it something worthy of the price we paid." 10 years later, Cooper stood before the Alliance Council as its ambassador. The former starship captain had traded his uniform for diplomatic robes, but his eyes still held the same determination that had carried him through the darkest battles. He presented Earth's proposal for a new galactic constitution, a document that guaranteed the rights of every species and established rules for peaceful cooperation. Representatives from over 1,000 worlds listened as he spoke. In the audience sat the veterans of the war. Retired Admiral Jack, now an old man who taught military history to young officers. Dr. Amy, director of the Alliance Science Academy. Kate Phillips, head of Galactic Intelligence. Commander Lisa Grant, who had become the voice of veterans across human space. And in the corner, watching quietly, stood a young officer. His species had been granted membership in the Alliance, allowed to rebuild as partners rather than enemies. He listened to Cooper's words and wondered what his ancestors would think of this new galaxy. Outside the council chamber, statues commemorated the heroes of the liberation. Human names stood alongside, and dozens of other species. They had fought together, died together, and won together. After the session, a young journalist approached Admiral. She was writing a history of the war and wanted to know what lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. Smiled, the tired smile of a man who had seen too much but still believed in tomorrow. "The thought we would surrender because we were small and they were powerful. They did not understand that size and power are not the same as courage and determination. They did not understand that humans, when pushed to the wall, do not give up. They push back. He looked at the statues outside the window, at the faces of friends who had died for this moment. We taught the galaxy that freedom is not given, it is taken, and once you have it, you must fight to keep it. That is the lesson. That is what humans brought to the stars. The journalist nodded and wrote his words down. The interview ended and walked outside to join his old friends for dinner. Behind him, the council chamber emptied as representatives returned to their worlds. The work of building peace would continue tomorrow. But for today, for this one day, they could celebrate what they had achieved. The galaxy had demanded Earth's surrender. Humanity had refused. And in doing so, they had changed everything. The end.